Thanks to this decision, some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore.
But we still don't know if the Supreme Court actually agrees with the Trump administration's executive order that said that children born to undocumented immigrants in the United States could not be considered U.S. citizens. Instead, what they're saying is that the judges who disagree with that order have to limit the scope of those orders just to their districts. In other words, it only could be blocked there. This only applies to newborn babies going forward in the future. It would not apply to anyone who is a U.S. citizen but was born in this country to an undocumented immigrant. Most reporters had questions about the earliest implications. Is it possible that 30 days from now, if a baby is born to an undocumented immigrant in a state where a judge has not blocked Trump's order, would that baby then not be considered a U.S. citizen?
This is all pending litigation. It's going to be decided in October by the Supreme Court.
But as we understand it, there is no pending litigation on birthright citizenship before this court. They already decided on the only case before them, but they didn't weigh in on whether or not Trump is actually violating the Constitution when he tries to undo birthright citizenship, something that has been enshrined in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. So what does all this mean going forward? We're still waiting to get more clarification from the Trump administration on how they plan to interpret this order and how they might move forward in states where it hasn't been blocked.
You've promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
We're going to have to get a change. We'll maybe have to go back to the people, but we have to end it. We're the only country that has it.
Through an executive action?
You know, we're the only country that has it. Do you know, if somebody sets a foot, just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need to, on our land, congratulations, you are now a citizen of the United States of America. Yes, we're going to end that because it's ridiculous.
Through executive action?
Well, if we can, through executive action. I was going to do it through executive action, but then we had to fix COVID first, to be honest with you. We have to end it.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but if you're undocumented or even here on a visa, this Supreme Court decision could impact your children, your future, and yes, our rights. And it starts with babies born in 2025. Trump's executive order trying to end automatic citizenship is on the table, and the Supreme Court just made it easier for this executive order to move forward. I'm going to break this down for you. Trump signed an executive order back in January that stopped birthright citizenship for babies born in the U.S. to undocumented immigrants or people on temporary visas. The Constitution says all people born on U.S. soil are citizens, but this order says not anymore, at least not if your parents aren't permanent residents or citizens. This would apply to babies born in 2025. Now, the Supreme Court just ruled that lower courts can't block this order nationwide. They can only protect the people in the direct lawsuit, and that means that it could still go into effect in parts of the country. Right now, there is a 30-day pause on the enforcement of this executive order, but after that, it's open season unless more legal action stops this. This isn't just about newborns. If this goes forward, it could open the door to creating a system where the president can deny certain rights with narrow remedies challenging the overstepping of presidential authority. This ruling has broad implications on all of us who are seeking the protection of our rights under the Constitution. So stay informed and make sure that you understand your rights and what needs to be protected, because right now that Supreme Court order is saying that each person needs to file a lawsuit if they don't want their citizenship or their baby's citizenship to be stripped.
Donald Trump is 100% standing on business with this Supreme Court ruling on the 14th Amendment. He says this was for the babies of slaves. Again, check this out.
Through this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with numerous policies that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis. And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. We can now promptly file to proceed with numerous policies that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis. And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation This was, in fact, it was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War. It was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious. But this lets us go there and finally win that case, because hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship, and it wasn't meant for that reason. It was meant for the babies of slaves. So thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis, including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and numerous other priorities of the American people. Which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation. This was, in fact, it was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War. It was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious.
That amendment was specifically made for Black Americans, the babies of slaves. Due to the complexities of the history in this country, they have to come up with that amendment. And it's crazy because the immigrants, the countries that they come from, don't even have birthright citizenship. It's not where you're born, it's who you're born to. It's blood right citizenship. Citizenship based on bloodlines, based on ancestry. If one of your parents is a descendant of a citizen, right? You can't just go to Italy. You can't just go to Ghana and have a baby and have no ties to that land, and that baby is all of a sudden a citizen of Ghana or Italy. It just doesn't work that way. In neither of these, in all these countries, it doesn't work that way. It's just that America, the United States, had a complex history where they had to make this amendment. Once again, even the countries these immigrants come from, there's no such thing as a birthright citizenship. You try having a baby over there and be like, well, this baby is a citizen to this land. No, it's not. Just found a loophole in the amendment that was made for Black Americans and the descendants of American slaves. Be told this should have been addressed a long time ago.
The executive order ending birthright citizenship, the constitutional ruling that anyone born in the United States is a citizen, that is ending in about 20 states about 30 days from now. Well, this ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court doesn't talk about the constitutionality of birthright citizenship. Instead, it addresses whether a lower court judge can essentially set nationwide policy, and the conclusion is it can't. As a result, President Trump's executive order ending birthright citizenship can move forward in about 20 states, and that can take place in about 30 days, so somewhere around July 27th. The tri-state area still has ongoing litigation to block this, and that stays in effect. So birthright citizenship in New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey will not be impacted for now. There are going to be a lot of debates about this. It was a 6-3 majority ruling, with Justice Amy Coney Barrett writing in the majority, and a couple of strongly worded dissenting opinions, including Justice Sotomayor and Justice Jackson, who said that this is a travesty of law. So a lot of debate will still move forward, but for now, the executive order ending birthright citizenship, the constitutional ruling that anyone born in the United States is a citizen, that is ending in about 20 states about 30 days from now, unless other states file lawsuits to change that.
So the Supreme Court has basically sided with Trump. Now, Trump signed an executive order to end the birthright citizenship. Now, the birthright citizenship was basically allows people to come into this country having kids on U.S. soil will automatically allow their kids to have U.S. citizenship. So Trump has stopped that. So basically, Trump says that the birthright citizenship was meant for the kids of slaves. So let's continue.
Let me make one thing real clear. This ain't about injunctions. This is about erasing the 14th Amendment with a smile. We thought the courts were supposed to be the last line of defense, the place where liberty stands tall even when presidents go rogue. But on Friday, in a 6-3 decision straight down party lines, the Supreme Court told us, nah, we good. They let Trump sneak his foot in the door to cancel birthright citizenship. And they dressed it up in legal jargon about equity and injunctions. Oh, but don't get distracted. The real target was always your rights. especially if you was born with brown skin, immigrant parents, or ancestors who came here in chains rather than visas. For a second, it looked like the lower courts might hold the line, right? 3 federal judges had already slapped Trump's executive orders down with nationwide injunctions, telling him loud and clear, you can't just rewrite the Constitution because you feel like it. Immigrant groups were celebrating. 22 states stood up in court. Even the appellate courts said, let this play out. Then SCOTUS slid in like a repo man in the night. Instead of ruling on whether Trump's executive order was flat out unconstitutional, which it was, they sidestepped it and went for the technical foul. Universal injunctions go too far. God damn it. Basically, the court said that judges can't stop Trump's policies for everyone. Only the people who specifically sued. So now we're playing legal whack-a-mole across 50 states while Trump rushes to implement a policy that directly contradicts 150 years of law. So what's at stake, right? Everything. Let me break this down plain and simple. Trump's executive order says, if your parents weren't here legally, or maybe they were here legally but temporarily, you don't deserve citizenship. Are you serious? The 14th Amendment that was passed after the Civil War to make sure that Black folks were considered full human beings says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens. It don't say, except for immigrants. It don't say, only if your parents had papers. It says, all persons. A phrase so fucking inclusive, it slapped the face of Dred Scott and every slave master of the fucking Confederacy. So what Trump is really doing here is rewriting Reconstruction. The very laws meant to undo slavery. And the Supreme Court just handed him the pen. You thought Isengard was bad? You thought Voldemort was a problem? Justice Amy Coney Barrett, Trump's handpicked avatar, penned this majority opinion like it was a legal lullaby, with principles of equity, she says, while politely gutting the power of federal courts to stop executive tyranny. And while they didn't officially cancel birthright citizenship yet, make no mistake, they laid the legal groundwork to allow Trump to do it himself. In the dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, she tried to hold the line, calling out how this decision disregards the long history of protection for non-parties. But her voice is now a lonely alarm in a house full of arsonists. This ain't about immigration. This is about control. It's about telling people of color, especially Black, brown, or immigrant babies, that their existence is conditional. That if you ain't got the generational wealth, land deeds, or ancestors off the Mayflower, you're permanently under review. Today is birthright citizenship. Tomorrow is voting rights. Affirmative action, gone. Housing, gone. Education, you got it, gone. When does it stop? In the MAGA cult, oh, they're going to keep smiling in your face, talking about this is what we voted for. This is what the founders wanted. Don't forget, y'all, the founders owned slaves. They're not playing. Trump told you on day one what he was coming for. And this court just gave him the green light to drive through your rights like a bulldozer in a graveyard. So don't wait on the Constitution to bleed before you speak up. Because if birthright citizenship can be reviewed, so can your freedom.